New York City, July 1980. Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital. Room 847. Bob Marley lay in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. He was 35 years old and dying. The cancer had spread from his toe to his lungs, his liver, his brain. He weighed 82 pounds. His dreadlocks, once thick and proud, were thin and brittle. The chemotherapy he'd initially refused had finally been accepted, but it was too late. The doctors gave him months, maybe weeks. If you love discovering the untold stories behind music history's most incredible moments, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell because we uncover the hidden gems that shape the legends we know today. It was 2:30 in the morning. Bob couldn't sleep. Pain radiated through his body in waves. He'd learned to breathe through it, to let it wash over him without fighting. Fighting made it worse. He heard something, crying, soft, muffled, coming from the hallway. Bob slowly sat up in bed. Every movement was agony, but he'd become accustomed to agony. He pulled on his robe, thin fabric hanging loose on his skeletal frame, and shuffled to the door. The hallway was dim, lit only by the fluorescent lights at the nurse's station 50 feet away. Bob looked left, then right. There, sitting on the floor against the wall, was a woman in nurse's scrubs. Her face was buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Bob walked toward her, his bare feet padding softly on the cold linoleum. When he reached her, he lowered himself slowly to the floor beside her. The movement sent shooting pain through his bones, but he didn't make a sound. "Sister," Bob said quietly. "What's wrong?" The woman looked up, startled. Her face was wet with tears, her eyes red and swollen. She was black, maybe 40 years old, exhausted in the way that only nurses working double shifts know. "Oh God, I'm sorry," she said quickly, wiping her face. "I didn't mean to disturb anyone. I just needed a minute." "You didn't disturb me," Bob said. "I couldn't sleep anyway. But you're hurting. I can see it." The woman stared at Bob. She didn't recognize him. His face was gaunt, his skin grayish. He looked like every other terminal patient in this hospital. "It's my son," she whispered, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. He's dying." Bob nodded slowly. He understood that pain better than most. "What's his name?" "David. He's 8 years old. Leukemia. They said maybe 2 weeks." "Is he here, in this hospital?" The woman shook her head. "No. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, 3 hours away. I had to take this shift. I need the money for his medical bills, but Her voice broke. "I should be with him, not here." Bob was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "What does David love? What makes him happy?" The woman looked confused by the question. "Why? Just tell me." "Music," she said. "He loves music, especially your music." Bob's eyebrows raised slightly. "My music?" "Bob Marley. He plays your songs constantly. 'Three Little Birds' is his favorite. He says it makes him less scared. He has your poster on his hospital room wall. She stopped, really looking at Bob's face for the first time. Her eyes widened. "Wait. Are you—" "Yeah," Bob said simply. The woman's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God. Mr. Marley, I'm so sorry. I heard you were here, but I didn't know it was this floor. I shouldn't have been crying out here. What's your name, sister?" Patricia Coleman." "Patricia, where exactly is your son right now?" "Children's Hospital of Philadelphia." "But Mr. Marley, you don't need to." Bob was already standing up, offering his hand to help Patricia to her feet. "Come on." "Come on where?" We're going to Philadelphia." Patricia stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Mr. Marley, you can't leave the hospital. You're too sick. The doctors told me I'm dying," Bob said calmly. "They told me to stay in bed and wait. But I'm not dead yet. And if your son loves my music, then I need to play it for him. Now." "But it's 3 in the morning. It's 3 hours away. You can barely stand." "I can stand," Bob said. He was swaying slightly, but he was standing. "Do you have a car?" "Yes, but—" "Then let's go. Mr. Marley, the doctors will never allow this." Bob smiled, a ghost of his old charismatic grin. "Then we won't ask them." 20 minutes later, Bob Marley walked out of Sloan Kettering Hospital wearing jeans, a button-up shirt, and a knit cap covering his thinning hair. He moved slowly, but he moved. Patricia walked beside him, terrified and amazed in equal measure. Her car was a beat-up 1972 Ford sedan, the kind of car held together by prayers and duct tape. Bob climbed into the passenger seat with difficulty, his body protesting every movement. "Are you sure about this?" Patricia asked, starting the engine. "I've never been more sure about anything," Bob said. They drove through the empty streets of Manhattan, then onto the highway heading south toward Philadelphia. Bob sat quietly for the first hour, breathing carefully, managing his pain. Patricia glanced at him every few minutes, expecting him to pass out or tell her to turn around, but he never did. "Tell me about David," Bob said finally. Patricia's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "He's the sweetest boy, so smart. He wants to be a teacher when he grows up. Wanted to be." Her voice broke. "He's been sick for 2 years. We tried everything. Chemo, radiation, experimental treatments. Nothing worked. 3 weeks ago, they told us there was nothing left to try." "And he's alone there now?" "His grandmother is with him. My mother. But she's 70. She can't stay awake all night with him. David wakes up scared. He has nightmares. He calls for me, and I'm not there." Patricia was crying again, tears streaming down her face as she drove. "You're there now," Bob said. "We're both there now." They arrived at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia at 6:15 a.m. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Patricia parked in the nearly empty lot. She looked at Bob, who had gone very pale during the drive. "Mr. Marley, maybe you should wait in the car. Let me check on David first. Make sure he's awake." "I didn't come here to wait in a car," Bob said. He opened the door and climbed out slowly, steadying himself against the vehicle. Patricia rushed around to help him, but Bob waved her off. "I can walk. Just show me where." They entered through the main entrance. The security guard looked up from his desk. "Visiting hours don't start until 9. "I'm a nurse here," Patricia said, showing her ID badge from New York. This is a patient's wish. Please." Something in her voice, or maybe the desperation in Bob's eyes, made the guard nod. "5th floor. But be quiet. Kids are sleeping." The elevator ride to the 5th floor felt eternal. Bob leaned against the wall, his eyes closed. Patricia watched him, guilt and gratitude warring in her chest. What was she doing? This man was dying. She was literally killing him by bringing him here. But when the elevator doors opened, Bob straightened up. "Which room?" 537. They walked down the quiet hallway. Through windows and doors, Patricia could see sleeping children, bald from chemotherapy, connected to machines, fighting battles no child should ever fight. Room 537 was at the end of the hall. Patricia opened the door quietly. Inside, an older woman sat in a chair beside a small bed, her head tilted back, snoring softly. In the bed, a tiny boy lay curled on his side. He was painfully thin, his head completely bald, his skin pale and waxy. An IV dripped clear fluid into his arm. Machines beeped softly, monitoring his vital signs. On the wall above his bed was a poster. Bob Marley, dreadlocks flying, mid-performance, alive and powerful. The contrast between that image and the man standing in the doorway now was almost cruel. Patricia approached the bed and gently touched her son's shoulder. "David, baby. Mama's here." The boy's eyes opened slowly. They were brown, huge in his thin face. When he saw his mother, a weak smile appeared. "Mama? You came." "I came, baby, and I brought someone with me." David looked past his mother and saw Bob standing in the doorway. The boy's eyes went wide. He stared at the poster on the wall, then at Bob, then back at the poster. "Is that—" David's voice was barely a whisper. Bob walked into the room. He pulled a chair close to David's bed and sat down slowly, bringing himself to eye level with the boy. "Yeah, little brother, it's me." David's eyes filled with tears. "You're Bob Marley. And you're David. Your mama told me you like my music." "I love your music," David said. "Especially Three Little Birds. It makes me not scared." "Are you scared now?" Bob asked gently. David nodded, a small, honest movement. "Me too," Bob said. "I'm scared too." David looked confused. "But you're Bob Marley. You're not scared of anything." "Everybody's scared of something, little brother. I'm scared of dying. I'm scared of leaving people I love. I'm scared of pain. But you know what I learned?" "What?" "Being scared is okay. It just means we're still here. We're still alive. We're still feeling. And as long as we're feeling, we can still find joy. We can still find music." Patricia's mother had woken up. She sat in her chair, hand over her mouth, tears streaming silently down her face as she realized who was sitting beside her grandson. "David," Bob said, "I didn't bring my guitar. I'm sorry. But would you like me to sing to you anyway?" David nodded, unable to speak. Bob Marley, one of the greatest musicians in history, dying of cancer, sat in a children's hospital room at 6:30 in the morning and began to sing. "Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be all right." His voice was thin, weak, nothing like the powerful instrument that had filled stadiums. But it was real. It was present. It was Bob Marley singing directly to an 8-year-old boy who was dying. "Singin' don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be all right." David began to cry. Not sad tears, but something else. Something that looked almost like peace. Bob sang the entire song. When he finished, the room was silent except for the soft beeping of machines and the quiet sounds of crying. Patricia, her mother, even a nurse who had appeared in the doorway, all weeping. "Thank you," David whispered. "That was the best thing that ever happened to me." Bob reached out and took David's small hand in his. "David, I want you to remember something. Music doesn't end when the song is over. Music lives in here." He touched David's chest, right over his heart. "I might not be here much longer. You might not be here much longer. But that song, that music, it lives forever, in everyone who hears it, in everyone who feels it." "Will I see you again?" David asked. Bob's eyes filled with tears. He knew the truth. They both knew the truth. "In the music, little brother. You'll always find me in the music." Bob stayed for 2 hours. He sang 4 more songs. He told David stories about Jamaica, about growing up poor, about learning guitar, about the first time he performed on stage. He made David laugh, which seemed impossible, but he did it. At 8:30 a.m., Bob was exhausted. Patricia could see him fading, his skin turning gray, his breathing labored. "Mr. Marley, we need to get you back to the hospital." Bob nodded. He stood slowly, every muscle screaming. He leaned down and kissed David's forehead. "Be brave, little brother. And remember, every little thing gonna be all right." Every little thing gonna be all right, David repeated softly. Patricia drove Bob back to New York. He slept most of the way, his body finally giving in to the exhaustion. When they arrived at Sloan Kettering, the staff was in a panic. Patient missing, possible escape, security searching. But when they saw Patricia helping Bob through the door, the panic turned to quiet understanding.